Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tom and Leo Commentary Podcast. I'm Tom alongside my cousin Leo. It is now March, and we got some topics to discuss with you all today. Kicking things off is Resident Evil 9 with Graham. Don't know if I said that right. I believe that is coming out later in the year. It is starring a new character who is supposedly the daughter of one of the reporter lady from the Outbreak. And Leon is coming back. And there's going to be a scenario for Leon, which is going to be more action based, and a scenario for the lady, which is going to be more horror based, kind of like in Resident Evil 6. And they return to Raccoon City. Now, Leon and I actually had a very different entry points into the series. I started with the first game back in '96 for PlayStation 1, and he started with Resident Evil 4. So, Leo, given your entry point, how has that shaped your overall opinion of the franchise?
Well, it appears that I came into it thinking it was a bit stabbier than it usually is, given I popped in on the actionized entries, as you pointed out.
Yeah, you plan on getting this game Resident Evil 9 at all, or are you pretty much done with the series at this point?
Well, I'm gonna have to give you a solid maybe on that. As you know, my gaming budget is rather tight, but I have at least been keeping an eye on Resident Evil. It just never quite made it into the numbers to actually get one. Perhaps I should check through those that have faded in price over the years.
Yeah, I got the system for it, but my money's tight too. I'm probably definitely not going to be a day one buy. I may have to wait for it to go down or get it used or something. But anyway, like, talking about the older games, I remember my brother rented Resident Evil along with Tekken 2 and Tomb Raider. I remember watching them playing it, and I kind of fell in love with the game. But I got around to playing it, I was so terrified of zombies I couldn't even go into another room.
Sounds like the game was a little too effective.
Back then it was. Looking back at it now, it's like it's not. It's really not that impressive. But as a kid, man, basically what the remake looked like and what us kids thought the original looked like when we were kids.
I have played the remake, and perhaps it's that I was desensitized to horror by that point, but the controls felt scarier than the zombies. Back when we were using the tank method.
Yeah, them tank controls really haven't aged too well, and it was like I believe standard with the survival horror games back then.
It does make sense to hobble the player just a little to put the horror in survival horror, though.
Well, yeah, and it's gone to the point now where, like, in a lot of the mainstay games, they don't even use the older characters because the older characters are so armed to the teeth and sophisticated. How you gonna make it scary when you can just solo everything with a knife?
Why in the interview for Leon's scenario in 9, they noted that they weren't trying to make it too scary, given that it doesn't make sense to have a cowardly Leon after all he's been through. And frankly, by this point, it should be the zombies hearing boss music rather than Leon.
Yeah, and he's old in this one too. It makes sense because, like, I think he was in his Shoney's in Resident Evil 2, and that took place all the way in '98. So that's almost 30 years.
I must admit, I had lost track of the timeline myself, dipping in and out of the series.
Yeah, the timeline starts in like the summer of '98, and I forget how much it skipped when you get to Resident Evil 4. Have you played any of like the old school games? Because I know they re-released them on GameCube.
The oldest that I have played is the Dead Silence remake of the original on the Nintendo DS. I do not think I have obtained 2 or 3 in any meaningful fashion. I almost did on Steam, but even with Steam, the estimated playtime couldn't really merit the price.
Yeah, I can understand that. But, shit, well, At this point, they pretty much remade the first three games, so there's almost no point to. Well, they kind of cut a lot of content out of Resident Evil 3 remade for whatever reason.
Huh. That had eluded me and is concerning, as a PS1 era game like 3 would have been fairly short to begin with.
Yeah, like, I played a little bit of the Resident Evil 3 remake, and they showed Nemesis way too soon in that. Like, in the original, you don't even see Nemesis. He gets to the police station, and it's a big reveal, shocking. And in the remake, he shows up at a house right at the opening sequence.
I think they went for a different kind of fear with Nemesis that time, going from the slow tension build up to the immediate jump scare. Which, given his publicity, I can kind of see making some sense. You can't really pretend Nemesis doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, but ever since he was, and it could just be nostalgia blinded me, but ever since the original, no one has really captured the Nemesis voice since the original game, in my opinion.
And that is impressive given the dubious audio quality of the PS1 entries.
Yeah, like a lot of his reappearances in like remakes, like Umbrella Chronicles and like Operation Raccoon City, like they make his voice too high pitched. Then they listen to like a low growl almost.
I cannot recall any of these renditions off the top of my head, but the low growl would be the most fitting for his size.
Yep. So I might have to imagine you played Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube, didn't you?
PS2, actually.
Oh, pardon.
I'm not sure if there is much difference, to be honest.
I think I rented it on GameCube. Maybe I can't really remember. I had it for PS2. I couldn't really get into it. When I was a kid, I was like a hardcore Resident Evil fan, and it didn't play as a Resident Evil game for my expectation at the time. But someday I'm gonna revisit that game and see what it's all about.
4 and Dead Silence were indeed different beasts.
Well, I'm gonna move on to our next topic, and today we're gonna talk about video game music. Now, I'm not gonna pretend like video game soundtracks are on par with like music albums from bands and stuff, but we've gotten to some pretty good soundtracks from video games over the years. The most obvious one being, Super Mario Bros. Tune is iconic. Then you got Zelda and Pokemon, and of course Final Fantasy has always had really good music from entry to entry. So Leo, are there any really game soundtracks that stand out to you when you think about it?
Well, I can still mostly remember the original NES rendition of the main Zelda theme. Though, out of these entries, I would say Final Fantasy stands out the most, as it is honestly hard to imagine someone that has got the feeling of boss music down to quite such a fine art as Final Fantasy.
Yeah, and I really like the Elwit theme too from Final Fantasy VII. That just makes you want to cry, man.
Which is a fitting sentiment given her, let's say, history. And while a fitting rendition as to what makes video game music unique to begin with, you really can't compare it to the proper concert bands because they're not trying to do the same thing. Video game music is more about trying to convey the emotion of a scene than, well, being a song.
Yeah, and it's really like, I play some games that don't even have music during the gameplay, and it really takes you out of the moment. Like, it doesn't suck you in at all. So I really appreciate the favorite tracks from all the games I played. I definitely think Final Fantasy is probably the biggest contender in that field, outside the more iconic ones. And if I don't know about this, no one will. I thought Evil Song, for instance, had a really good soundtrack because almost everyone theme was just slapping in that game.
I half remember this. And if we're plugging obscure entries, I may as well give a shout out to Project Moon and all of their games, as it is another one of the series that has done boss music on a level that is very hard to find a competitor for.
And what was that one song from the fighting Final Fantasy game like? It's on the tip of my tongue. It's like, was it called God on Fire or something?
From the Dissidia spin-offs, you mean?
Yes.
The Berserk Chaos theme got in fire.
Yeah. Are there any video game soundtrack that just hasn't appealed to you over the years?
Well, therein lies the problem in that I do not remember unappealing music very well. So instead, I'm going to branch to a slightly different topic about your prior complaint of video games that don't have music, not quite drawing people in. And there is a spin on that can work. Survival horror.
Ah.
Turning off the music helps get you start trying to listen for things that aren't there and helps build the tense atmosphere. Dead Space, the second one in particular, uses technique very well at certain points.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Like, though Resident Evil did have music, but it was kind of the tense, spooky for I didn't really add it, especially in the first game, added like the Manson's rooms and stuff. And of course, and the one shot that didn't need to be like Hall Pacific with the ending credits was I always liked.
Was there another branch of this topic you wish to pursue?
I guess not. Anyway, PlayStation 1 versus Nintendo 64. Now, I have to imagine that back as a kid at least, you were full neck deep into Nintendo love and didn't even care about the PlayStation. Is that a correct assumption?
Actually, my libraries for the two of them are about equal.
Huh.
I think the problem was that due to the games I ended up acquiring, I ended up compartmentalizing different genres into different systems. With PS1 being the primary engine for RPGs, for example. Kind of hard to top the likes of Legend of Dragoon, Legend of Gaia, never mind that being where I finally got into Final Fantasy. While Nintendo, I think its most iconic was the collection platformer style thing like Super Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie. Other genres balanced out more, but to be honest, I don't have a clear winner between the systems, in part because of this.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's kind of funny to think about because, like, whenever I get into a Super Nintendo versus Sega Genesis debate, people always bring up the RPGs on that system. And then it seemed like all the RPGs jumped from Nintendo to PlayStation. And I remember reading that the creator of Final Fantasy was very upset that Nintendo decided to stick to cartridges for Nintendo 64 because they wanted to make, I guess, Final Fantasy VII on that system, but they couldn't because it couldn't handle the hardware limitations, so they had to work with PlayStation, and the rest was history.
A piece of history that I had been missing. Thank you for filling that in.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine like it was impressive when they compressed Resident Evil 2 to a Nintendo 64 cartridge. But considering the Final Fantasy games on PS1 were between 3 to 4 discs, I don't think that would have been possible to put it on Nintendo 64. They would have had to cut out so much content for the game to do that.
Which, frankly, would have defeated the point with an RPG.
Like, are there any RPGs on Nintendo 64 at all? Like, all I can think about is Quest 64.
That is the main one that I remember as well. I know there was another one that I had rented, but cannot remember the title of.
Wonder why that was, but I may just answer that question, man, because RPGs are so long and like it requires so many bits, especially in doing data era that the distance filter is going to handle for most of the RPG people wanted to make at the time.
Well, Quest 64 was shorter than the multi-discers, but still a respectable length. I think part of the problem, for me at least, was that, well, this was still the era where advertising was thin. So I just had to go with what I blindly stumbled onto. And I may have just missed standard RPGs on the 64 because of this.
Yeah. So, but as for me, much like you, I had an even library of both systems. I didn't really pick a side back then. Like Nintendo 64 was the first console I actually owned. And then I got a PS1 and I love both. Like I still got my Nintendo 64 actually. And it still works, which is impressive. I think I got it. I can't remember when I got it, but it would have had to at least been 98 or 99 because Ocarina of Time was already out, and that was the first game I bought when I got. Actually, I bought it before I even had Nintendo 64 because I just I had the money for that game. I just grabbed it.
As for me, I can't remember the specific acquisition of the systems, only that I still have both of these, and as far as I recall, they were working recently. Though, when recently was, it's kind of lost the fog of ages.
Yeah, though, my N64 was getting to the point where some of my games don't work right away, and then you have to do the classic blowing in the cartridge thing. And I no longer have a PS1. My PS2 is badly damaged. And
My condolences.
yeah, and I'm missing my freaking charger for my PS3 controller, so I can't play my PS3 right now. So I basically just had to rely on emulators at this point.
Hmm.
Okay, moving on to our next topic. Leo, you said in the last episode that when it came to like Marvel, and I'm guessing DC as well, you were introduced to the comics for like the TV shows or the movies.
That is correct.
When it comes to Marvel and DC, did you ever lean towards one or the other, or were they both pretty much evenly in your interest?
They were pretty much evenly in my interest, as honestly, it took a while for the rivalry even existing to click. But given the whole Saturday morning cartoon thing that got me into them, I would say on the movie side, things have slightly tilted toward Marvel. I am not sure why does those movies seem to go over better with the family than the DC ones.
Yeah, I think the reason for that is it's just matter of fact. Outside the Batman movies, DC just didn't have a lot of good movies to compete with Marvel, especially when Marvel started the MCU. I think this is
Marvel certainly has fired more shots.
Yeah, and I think this is something DC is starting to fight back with the recent movie, like the last Superman, the Supergirl movie coming out later this year. But in the past, like a lot of the DC movies have been underwhelming. I did like Man of Steel, I did like Dawn of Justice and Wonder Woman, a couple of those, but they couldn't compare to Marvel.
Hmm. Perhaps that they've not quite perfected a dialogue formula like Marvel has.
Yeah, but I think what DC really shines is in the animated movies and TV shows. Those always been good. And they did have a really long one for live action TV show. They started with Smallville. It lasted like 10 seasons. And then they made way for what would be known as the Arrowverse, which shows like Arrow, The Flash, Legend of Tomorrow, Supergirl, Batwoman, Black Lightning, Stargirl, Naomi. They all existed in the same shared universe, which was unheard of for TV shows at that time. Kind of still is. So a lot of people kind of complained they were like a basically like a soap opera as I see the resemblance, but I don't care.
Well, this explains much as those shows are largely a blind spot for me. Like, I know Smallville exists, but I have never seen a full episode. I'm unsure why they just don't seem to click all that well with me.
Yeah, like when Smallville came out, I was really too young to appreciate what it was trying to do. The shows of that nature is more about the trauma and the relationships than the action. And as a kid, the only thing I really cared about was just seeing Superman beat up bad guys.
The classic lack of attention of child brain.
And like, and I dare say, I mean, after a while, it seemed like the action scenes didn't last too long. First season, they were decent. Like, you would get to the third act, and they would have like this big fight scene. But almost, and I swear to God, almost every episode, Kryptonite would be coming to play somehow. Like, Clark would be about to fight, and someone whip out Kryptonite, he would just go down so fast. I'm like, oh, come on, man.
Kryptonite really is too common for just how powerful it is.
And but it's like he has other weaknesses. They just overuse Kryptonite in my opinion, but that's not just a fault of Smallville. At least in Supergirl though, maybe on Superman and Lois, because there was another show from that era. It didn't use Kryptonite as much, and man, it's like one of the recurring themes of the Arrowfoot shows was the hero would usually get the butt whooped in about maybe the first or second act. It kind of adds to them overcoming the odds and winning at the end. It was kind of harder to buy in shows like Supergirl and Superman because the characters are so powerful. It's like, how are they getting beat up?
I think they really should have done more to bring certain villains up to Superman's level rather than just having such an easy way to debuff him. That would have done a better job of preserving the combat drama.
Yeah, I know. They get really crazy with the. Well, actually, they get crazy with the power levels in both comic book companies. I mean, just look at how, like, you got Galactus, was basically a giant planet. You know, how the hell are you supposed to fight that?
Well, they made it work against Lavos. But again, that's not an easy fight. That's a straight up raid boss situation. Which is rather hard to do in a movie or series medium, to be honest.
Yeah, I know. Like the reason Thanos was done so well in the offensive move because they basically took like 10 years to build up to him, and that was like crazy. That was a crazy slow burn there. Then he basically just comes into the scene and beats up everyone.
The first run of a raid boss attempt is rarely a graceful affair.
Yeah, no. Now, if you had to choose one or the other, which would you choose?
Huh. Grain of salt, this is a very short-sighted decision for the sake of the video. But as things currently stand, I would have to choose Marvel due to the family bonding time for the movies.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I think I was more of a Marvel person than a DC guy. Cause like I like Spider-Man, the X-Men. Then I got real into the offensive because of the movies. But lately, I think the Arrowfoot show's got a big, what's the word I'm looking for? A big reason why I'm making the decision. I have to go with DC these days. So that's just, I've always had like a love for those characters, and for years I've just been wanting to see them done well. Like, because it seemed like almost every time there would be an adaptation, they would just butcher it somehow. But the animated shows and the Arrowverse shows, and now the new movies, I feel are really kind of bringing popularity back to DC at a time where people are pretty much worn out with Marvel.
Which was inevitable with how rapid fire they're going on the movies.
Yeah, no. Okay. So moving on to our last topic for the episode, and I really wish when I recorded on Zoom they would show a time link. I have no idea how long we've been talking.
I have
Anyway,
also lost track.
this is the year of the 40th anniversary since the original Legend of Zelda came out to Japan. And fittingly, and I didn't plan this, back in January I did my review on A Link to the Past. And when that video came out, I realized, oh, it's the 40th year anniversary of this franchise. This is going to do well. And it did, over 100 views. Yeah, so let's see. Zelda came out in 86. It is now Shoni 6. Leo, do you have any fond memories with the franchise you would like to share, or should to reflect on like the fact it's been around 40 years now?
On one hand, it doesn't really feel like it's been that long somehow, yet it does make logical sense. Time is a strange concept. I suppose the biggest thing to share is that Legend of Zelda is what got me definitively hooked into video gaming to begin with, the original one of the NES. Funnily enough, I had tried Mario first, and while that was well enough, there was a certain lack of continuity to it with the whole game over situation. Legend of Zelda, well, solved that problem. Turns out I'm a bit of an exploration fanatic, and that basically set the stage for me keeping out the Nintendo system, expanded the library with the second one, and so on. And I can honestly count the Zelda releases that I have missed on one hand.
I did not know that Zelda was what got you into gaming. That's a really cool story, Leo. Yeah, I have a kind of interesting story about how I got into Zelda. And I believe I told you this before. I don't know if I said it on this channel yet, but so the original Zelda could have been my first Zelda. Because my brother had an NES, which I believe he sold to you later in life. And
This is correct.
And I think he had the first two Zelda games. He would not let me play them. He would not let me touch them. He would not let me go anywhere near them because they were the special gold cartridges. And he told our mom, but I shouldn't say all this content, my mom, I will ruin them. So I never got to play Zelda on the original hardware unless you want to count emulation. So I grow up. It's been years. It's 1998. I'm thinking to myself, what is this franchise like? What is this franchise all about? I'm reading books at freaking Goodwill about Zelda, trying to get an idea of what this game is like. And then I see Ocarina of Time. And I'm begging my mom, please get this game for me. And she's like, no, son, it's too violent. I'm like, what the heck you talking about, too violent? I have watched my brother play Resident Evil, Metal Gear Solid, Dino Crisis. What else that was violent that he played? Freaking Spawn, Mortal Kombat. And you're saying this game is too violent? But she eventually relented. I got the game, I played it, and Ocarina of Time was everything I imagined this series to be and more. Like, it shaped my entire opinion on the franchise and got me into the Nintendo 64.
That was quite eventful compared to how I've acquired most of my games, and I must point out that Metal Gear Solid and Mortal Kombat in particular should have quelled the too violent argument on the spot, given what you're doing to other people in those games, rather than the oblivious monsters in Zelda.
Yeah, like she didn't think I and me playing Mortal Kombat 2 with my brother.
Really, that is the one she should have been trying to bar you from.
Right?
Unfortunately, there's just this odd barrier between parents and new media that tends to blur their perception a little.
And I'm sure if I bring this up to her when I call her, that she probably don't even remember saying this, but I remember that clearly because I was like, come on, mom. Like, don't do this to me.
Which memories catch are a very fickle thing.
But yeah. No, and unpopular opinion, I did not care too much for a show as Mass. And I'm kind of taken aback how popular that entry has gotten. Because when I was a kid, it just seemed like the kind of less light shake of the Ocarina of Time, and now like people praise it almost as much or more than Ocarina of Time. And I kind of see why. I mean, has a good story, has a good action feel to it, but being stuck in that DQ scrub, you know,
I believe Deku Scrub's the pronunciation.
yes, like being stuck in that match, having to do the whole opening sequence in that, it killed my desire to play it.
For me, the time limit was more of a problem. Majora's Mask is certainly harder to initially get into. That cannot be denied.
Yeah. Okay, we got about 5 minutes left before this room is gonna go out, so I guess we'll just wrap it up here. Once again, thank you for listening to us. Clips of this video will be coming out in the following weeks, so stay tuned for that. If there's something you just want to recap, we'll probably even get new audience who just want to watch the clips and not the full episode. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up, leave and subscribe if you want to see more. I do reviews every Wednesday, podcast episodes every Thursday. And until next month, see ya, Leo. Anything you want to say as we wrap this up?
One note I had forgotten is that I really do have to praise the decision for Resident Evil 9 to have different scenarios with different tones of horror. That was a very good way to compartmentalize people's expectations. This will suffice before we sign off.
Yeah, I agree because that's how Resident Evil started. It had scenarios. Yeah. Well, thank you for showing the Tom and Leo Commentary Podcast. We will see you in the next episode. Bye.